Hi, fifth graders. This is Mrs. Ostrovic. This week I am going to guide you through the lesson on division with decimals. So if you want to try the get ready on your own before I solve it, go ahead and pause the video and then play it again when you've given it a shot. Here is the answer though. For our get ready today, the problem says the area of a rectangle is 56 and 96 hundredths meters squared. If the length is 16 meters, what is the width? I made a quick correction on my copy. Right here, instead of perimeter, it should say width, and that is already corrected on the copy that we posted in Google Classroom. So let's go ahead and write down what we know. We know that the total perimeter of this rectangle is 56 and 96 meters squared. That is the total area, and the problem tells us that. The other thing we know is that it has a width, or I apologize, we need to find the width. It has a length of 16 meters. So the question mark here is, what is its width? So we're going to take what we know to find the width. We're going to take the total area, which is 56 and 96 hundredths meters squared, and we're going to divide that by the length, the one dimension that we know, which is 16, and that will give us our width. So 16 skip counts into 56 about 3 times. I made myself off on another line sheet of paper a skip counting list by 16, so you can make a skip counting list for yourself also. So about 3 times, so 16 doesn't go into 5, it goes into 56 about 3 times. So I'm going to make sure my 3 is over the 6. I'm going to multiply 3 times 6 first. 3 times 6 is 18 with a 1 carryover, and then 3 times 1 is 1 plus my carryover is 4. When you subtract that, we've got a little bit of borrowing to do. So 16 minus 8 leaves 8, and 4 minus 4 leaves nothing. The decimal here is just going to go ahead and pop up straight into our quotient. Should line up exactly from where it is in the dividend. So I'm going to pop that up there. I'm not going to deal with bringing the decimal down into my work. Next, we are going to bring down the 9. So now I have to figure out how many times 16 goes into 89. Looking back at my skip counting list, it goes in about 5 times. So I'm going to put my 5 up here in my quotient. 5 times 6 is 30. I can put down the 0 with a 3 carryover. And 5 times 1 is 5 plus the 3 that I carried over makes 8. So 89 minus 80 is going to leave us 9. And we're going to bring down our very last digit from the dividend, and that is 6. Looking at my skip counting list, 16 will go into 96 exactly 6 times. So 6 times 6 is 36. I can put down the 6. It's got another 3 to carry over, and then 6 times 1 is 6 plus the 3 is 9. So that comes out evenly, and my quotient right here, 3 and 56 hundredths meters is the width. So 3 and 56 hundredths meters. That's your width. Now let's take a look at the lesson review. The lesson review has 2 problems, and one of the things I want you to remember is exactly how to write out the problem. Which number is the dividend and which one is the divisor, because I remember from class that there were kids that wrote the problem backwards. So A says 7 divided by 28. So 7 divided by 28. So 28 is too large to divide into 7. So I'm going to add a decimal, and I'm going to add a couple of zeros. The rule of thumb is usually you add about 2 zeros. And I have not changed the value of that 7. Adding a decimal with a couple of zeros, or as many zeros as you want, still makes the value worth 7. So 28, you might need to think about this as 30, kind of just to help you do a little bit of skip counting. 28 going into 7 is not going to work. That's far too large. But if I'm thinking about 28 in my mind as kind of being pretty close to 30, 30 can go into 70 about 2 times. Before I do that, I want to bring my decimal once again from the dividend up into my quotient. And so, because 28 is not going into 7, 28 is going into 70 about 2 times. Those of you that like to do your multiplication off to the side, you can do 28 times 2 off to the side here. 2 times 8 is 2 times 8 is 16. Put down the 6, carry the 1, and 2 times 2 is 4 plus 1 is 5. That makes 56 under here. In the get ready, I was doing 2 times 8 is 16, putting down the 6 and carry the 1, and then 2 times 2 was 4 plus the 1 is 5, so I'm still getting 56. There's some borrowing. I can't take 6 from 0, so my 7 becomes a 6, and my place value moves over here, so I now have 10. 10 minus 6 is 4, and 6 minus 5 is 1. Once again, I am not going to be dealing with the decimal down in my work. I put the decimal in my quotient, and I'm done with it. When I bring down my next number, I have 140. So now I'm thinking, how many times does 28 go into 140? You can do repeated addition, you can do a skip counting list, you can think about 28 as 30. But if you think about 28 as 30, it's going to go into 140 about 5 times. So you can either do your math off to the side, 28 times 5 this time, or I'm just going to do the problem, the work within the problem. 5 times 8 is 40. Put down the 0. It's a 4 carry, and then 5 times 2 is 10 plus the 4. Lines up. 140 minus 140 gives us no remainder, so our answer for this one is 25 hundredths. For B, we do 6 1/2 or 6 5 tenths divided by 13. So 6 1/2 divided by 13. Make sure you have your divisor and dividend in the right place. So once again, 13, too big to divide down into 6. 6 is too small. I'm going to put an X there to remind me not to start my quotient there. I want to go ahead and pop the decimal up into my quotient. I don't have to really deal with it anymore. And now I'm just trying to figure out how many times 13 goes into 65. Again, you can do a skip counting list and do, groups of 13, 26, 39, 52, and then 65. Well, that's what I'm looking for. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 times 3 is 15 with a 1 carryover. 5 times 1 is 5, plus the 1 I carried is 6. So the answer to this one is 5 tenths. There's one problem I also want to do off of the practice side of this assignment. I'm going to have you do the rest of them yourself, but on the practice side of this assignment, I wanted to take a look at B because it's the only problem where we have a decimal in both the divisor and the dividend, and I want to remind you what to do when that happens. So again, let's read this problem. 8 4 tenths divided by 7 tenths. So 8 and 4 tenths divided by 7 tenths. The one thing that we absolutely cannot do is have a decimal in our divisor. So we have to move this decimal out of the way. We want to move it to the end of the problem. And what we just did is we took the decimal and we slid it one place value, and it now kind of hangs out at the end of our number. What we really did was take 7 tenths, which is what we started with, and now we made it 7 with the decimal sitting at the end. So we actually are multiplying that by 10. 7 tenths multiplied by 10 moves that decimal out of there, and it becomes a 7. What we have to do is we also have to multiply by 10 for the dividend. We take this decimal, and since we slid it over once here, we're going to slide it over once here, and now that decimal point is hanging out at the end also. We multiplied it by 10. So what was 8 and 4 tenths is now 84. So sometimes, because I've got arrows and decimals and things that are maybe distracting us a little bit, I rewrite the problem. Moving that decimal to the end gave us 7 as our divisor, and moving that decimal to the end, or multiplying both of those by 10, makes our problem 84 divided by 7. With the decimals at the end of the problem, we really don't even need to include them in our work. So 7 goes into 8 one time. 1 times 7 is 7. We subtract it. We have 14 left, and 7 goes into 14 twice with nothing left. So go ahead and practice the rest of those problems on your own and use the answer key to check yourself.